Welcome to Unmasking, a podcast for those ready to lead, love, and live with more clarity, freedom, and truth. We all wear masks, and they have helped us all to fit in, stay safe, get ahead. But over time, those same masks start to weigh us down. They disconnect us from our joy, our energy, and our true self. This show is an invitation to explore 15 of those masks that we wear to be accepted, admired, or in control, and then to get really curious about what they're really costing us. I'm your host, Barbour, and in each episode, we'll look at one mask and explore what it protects, what it hides, and what's possible without it. I invite you to join me in unmasking. We'll laugh, we'll probably cringe, but we'll be real. So welcome back to Unmasking, and I have the honor and privilege of having a really special person who's recently come into my life and shares his wisdom, and we toss and play with a lot of great things. Michael Williams is welcome, first of all. And thanks for taking the mask assessment. And it was no surprise that you came up with the Overachiever. And I'm going to not give your story away, but share that Michael is really one of the few people I've met who've actually led without a mask and had an incredible run at it and was able to lead and work and change an environment from his heart, and also with a version. I say when I hear you talk about your work at the hospital, it was with play. And so I believe that the Overachiever mask was a piece of that pie, and I look forward to hearing what your thoughts are on that. But first, welcome. And instead of bios, I think we're going to do with what's your favorite way to make people feel when they leave your presence?
I personally get enjoyment from watching other people, a little sense of a little bit more weightiness when they walk away, or a little bit more substance because of something we talked about went to a place that maybe they don't normally go.
Yeah, I can imagine
Especially
that.
when I'm leading a team and I'm introducing a concept or something like that, and when the light bulbs go off and they begin getting it, I get so much joy from that.
Amazing. And I know you do it quite often. So thank you. Thank you from those of us who get to enjoy your presence and the ability to be inspired. So that's amazing. So the Overachiever, were you surprised to see the Overachiever come up as your number one mask?
No, I wish I was, but, but no, it's 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 been a label that's been attached to me probably from the very first time I took any kind of leadership assessment or personality assessment. So yeah, and it is what it is. I remember when taking the Enneagram for the first time, it wasn't any big shock that I was a 3. And if 8 could be a wing, I'd have an 8 wing, but 'cause there's a little of that side. But fortunately, that 8 stays in the closet most of the time, and it's a 3. And so the overachiever just, is just another way of labeling that to me, that Enneagram 3 personality.
Yeah.
Um,
Do you remember, like, I think ultimately the overachiever is obviously our doing energy and our way of showing up out in the world in service and servant leadership. But do you remember who taught you the difference between doing and being? Do you remember being taught that?
I don't remember being taught doing and being until I was way advanced into my adulthood. And was in a leadership program where we took a year and went through in detail the hero's journey, Joseph Campbell's hero's journey. And in that, I became more introduced to the idea of, hey, you're not just doing all the time. You can just be. You can just sit with yourself and be. Um, how such a hard concept to put into practice, not to understand.
Right, exactly. And do you, growing up, did I know a little bit if you want to share about your father, but like, where did the belief, I mean, what lives under the doing from where you found purpose at a young age? Like, where did you?
I had a father who came from my parents were really young when I was born. They had just turned 20, like a month or two before I was born. And so they were basically probably more mature than I was at 20, but they were having to grow up pretty fast. And my dad was finishing college, and he was the only one from his whole family that ever went to college and went past high school. So he had inside him this burning uh, that I don't know if it was felt like he needed to prove himself, or it was just he wanted to climb out of the poverty that he was raised in. And so he entered the ministry, and then it became a life of service, but service blurred with doing, I would say. Um, and a service as an occupation, not service as although his heart was in it. But from that start, early on, there was that factor. He was my hero and still was till the day he died. But I saw certain lessons in him that I attached to. Of course, leadership. He was kept leading and going from one church to another, bigger and bigger, and then at one point he decided to switch careers and move into to teaching and counseling. He wanted to impact young people through counseling in public schools, and so I watched him do that. And then my mother was had finished her education just after my dad, and became a teacher. And but along the way, this is early life lessons that were imparted in me, good and bad, and this is where a lot of it comes from, I believe. My brother was born 3 years younger than me, and he had a congenital handicap. And this was back in the late 50s, and so at that time the medical care was not what it is today, and so they he had to be in a special chair and wheelchairs and things at home and all that. And I remember my mother saying, your brother's going to require a lot of our time and attention, so we need you just to be a good boy and do good. And that locked in, and that label was just put on my forehead. I'm a good boy. And so don't do anything that gets us in trouble. Don't do anything that disappoints us. And so I believe that's where the loud messages got imparted. Um, and then I can remember it carrying all the way through when I was in medical school, and my dad had gone back to get a PhD because obviously he was an overachiever, and and I don't know that he ever took that mask off. But I never will forget. I walked in, and I had finished my first or second year of medical school, and he had gotten his grades for his PhD program. And he showed them to me, and he had a 3.85 grade point average, and he looked at me and said, "You need to beat this in medical school." Medical school was it's a different animal.
I don't know, but I believe you.
Okay, but it takes a little bit of effort to get a 3.85 in medical school. People do it, but it's certainly not the run of the mill. And so anyway, but it was always that challenge, that intention, that energy to where you are now is just okay, and there's much more that you need to go after. Anyway, there's a lot there, but there's that. And then there was one last thing I'll share is I remember being 4 or 5 years old. I don't know why I have this memory, except it lasted till absolutely today. My mother taking me to the pediatrician. Of course, when you're a kid, all you care about is, am I going to get a shot? I mean, you don't care about anything else, And so I'm kind of sitting there anxiously. I remember her taking my hand, rolling out my fingers, and showing them to the pediatrician, and said, "He's going to be my surgeon." Now, I was 4 or 5. And from that point on, my 10th birthday, when kids were getting all kinds of toys and stuff, I was given like a real legitimate stethoscope. And so the message was there, you're going to medical school. And I got on the treadmill and stayed there all the way through, and then ended up practicing medicine for almost 30 years. And so, uh, never questioning, you know. Uh, so anyway, that overachiever, that good boy, that we already know what you're going to be, and so that that really defined a lot of the boundaries and parameters and that the way my life was lived for much of it, and that's why the lessons of doing versus being didn't come in until much, much later.
I mean, you think of your dad and the situation he came with, with poverty and immigrating, and like it makes so much sense that working hard, and then it was working. So like, of course, that was there. But what I couldn't help but notice when you were talking about, like when your parents said things to you, the way you hold presence is you're a deep listener, and that and the responsibility you took with that was like it feels like a very serious commitment. Like, oh, like if I'm listening to you, I'm like, you're like, yes, I'm in, yes, I'll do, like, and I can almost imagine what it was, what your little boy was like, is like, oh yeah, that's the way to go. I love you, of course, got it. And I just appreciate that. I also had whatever my parents said, like I never questioned either. And I think that what's interesting is as I've gotten older is I probably have I have more of a disruptor, a little bit of a fire starter in me than I ever acknowledged as well. Like I didn't really allow her to come out because she wouldn't be of service because I didn't know how to use it with kindness, with compassion, but with truth as like a truth teller, maybe even being the true disruptor, maybe, whether it's just with the people I love and or in environments where, it's a social, cultural situation.
Sure, sure.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
you're, you know, most of the times you're brought up with that parental respect, and so you find a way to go with it.
Yes. And I found that I'd be curious about you. This is jumping a bit. But like for me, when I had the three boys and they didn't share that essence of who I was, that is where some really crazy behavior by me came out in my parenting. Even recently, someone said, "Oh, you must have been such a good parent. Your kids are lovely." And I said, "It depends on how you define good parent." And they go, "What do you mean?" And I said, "Well, to be truthful, if it's because I made no mistakes and they just look good in the end, like I'm definitely not one of those." I go, "My kids have gotten where they are because of all the mistakes. Like if you can make the most mistakes possible and, try to make them in like for me, my ego, not, anyhow." So yeah, just the whole, like, you're not an overachiever. What? Like, you're going to say no to me and you're going to think of your own thoughts. It has been, well, humorous is the exact word of that. And I know you have two girls,
I do.
daughters, and are girls different? Were your girls like you, or did you have a disruptor in the crowd?
Had one that wasn't an active disruptor, um, but she was a behind the scenes disruptor. So, for example, there's a joke in our house when I would, say no matter what, her name's Emma, and I would say, Emma, she'll ask me a question, I'll say, you need to go right. And she will all the time go left, every time. And so here we are. She's in her mid 30s with three kids of her own. I still know now if I think she ought to go right, I'll tell her to go left and she'll go right. So it's not
Good,
a stubborn
nice
thing,
deep
it's just an
pattern.
unconscious thing. It's just something that's deep in her subconscious that she's an independent, but I just love her to death. She's an independent, it was an independent little kid and precocious, and it's turned out to be that's much of what she still is as an adult. But yeah, and then both my girls are pretty independent. I mean, they have their own minds. I'll put it that way, and
Yeah,
in a
yeah,
really good way.
in
Yeah.
a really good way. I think that one of the benefits, and I'll go David Brooks, second half mountain. We'll keep us ourselves in the second half. But one of the beauties of seeing yourself in cycles of where the overachiever mask has served you to get to outcomes that you desired. What can you tell us about where you are in your life right now? Like in this moment, I think we've discussed that still having purpose and meaning and a direction that aligns is really important, no matter what age or stage you're in, frankly. And and but I'm just curious how maybe the mask, or what you might want to say about how the mask has shifted, or do you feel like you've surrendered it? Do you feel like it still serves you?
I don't really actively think I try to use it any longer. I think I have. So there's been a shift in my entire uh, journey. I was reading about this morning, actually. There's a book by a guy named Parker Palmer called Let Your Life Speak. And he was talking about how when we're born into a set of expectations, of which those expectations, much like what I just already spoke about with my parents, are expectations that take you far away, often from your true self, and we start living in those expectations. And so, and what your life needs to become, and this is what I can relate to, is it has to get on a journey to true self and get away from that. And so, I started that journey probably not that long ago, just several years ago, but of understanding um, I don't really need that mask anymore. But however, it still comes out in certain situations, and those situations are when I walk in a room and there's people I don't know, and if that message is coming in like you need to impress these people kind of thing. Um, that used to be the time when it really came out. Now it's of a situation where usually I'll go in and I go, where I am now in my life, you like me or you don't. And I'm not here to, win your love and approval. I'm just here to be me. And then hopefully there's a way where we can connect. And so therefore, because so I did some real deep work a number of years ago. I went to a place in San Diego and spent a week there. What it boiled down to was just some real intensive group counseling, group therapy with 6 other people from all over the world that I'd never met, obviously. And so in that experience, I learned that the culmination of a lot of my behaviors was clearly labeled as something I would have argued strongly that you're completely nuts to label me codependent. But I was labeled codependent. And as I started looking at the people pleasing and all the things we do as overachievers to win love, and the people pleasing, the perfectionism, the trying to control the outcomes of something, and so you manipulate things to get them to come to a certain outcome. Um, and so once I became aware of that, and that was just several years ago, just not that long, and I began intentional on this journey, which is how we came together, of getting real intentional about understanding that, taking that journey that Parker Palmer talks about through the light and the dark to understand where is your true self, who is your true self. And so that's the journey I've been on. That came with meaningful relationships that I used to not have. Um, Deep, I'll say relationships where people saw me as I was, not as how they wanted to see me. And then the idea that then I took it, even though I had been had a deep Christian faith for my whole life, it really wasn't a part of me until not too long ago, where I really began to go deep in a spiritual journey. And that has been part of my transformation of understanding more and more who my true self is. So I'd say meaningful relationships uh, that I probably blocked before. Um,
And
and
do you think that the mask was part of the block? Like, do you feel like,
yeah, yeah, definitely.
yeah,
Uh, yeah, I've been often, I don't know what the reason is for it, but there's been several situations that I've been chosen to go into environments where I was completely out of my element or in my mind untrained for, and I had to find a way to perform. So there's been several of those. And so finally you get tired. You get tired of carrying the mask. You get tired of, you just get, it's exhausting, uh, quite frankly, after a while. And so I finally just got sick of it and realized, okay, this journey to my true self is truly part of my hero's journey. And so the first thing is you gotta, you know, not the first thing, but one of the things you do is, you need to burn the boats. And so beginning to, it's slow burning, but trying to get rid of the mask it's been, because it's has kept me from my true self.
Amazing. And, if you were to give advice to your younger self, um, now we always say that assuming the younger self would listen. I'm not sure my younger self would have listened to the advice, but for the wise people out there that actually would listen, and what would you say to yourself in hindsight?
I say listen more to that tug that you feel inside. When you know that what you're about to do is not authentic to who you are. And maybe you don't even know who you are. And so what I would say that, but in order to get on that path, for me, you have to begin to live towards that tug, because the tug is there. It's internal, and it tells, now I feel that tug and I go with it. I don't even question it. Previously, I would try to shove it away, and because it didn't, people wouldn't, if I went with that, people were not gonna want to be around me or not want to respect me or think that's the dumbest thing I've ever heard if I said that or did whatever the tug is. And so now I just say what I want to say, and do what I want to do. And um, so that's what I would tell that younger person. There is some wisdom to be learned from experiences, but in order to help you get down the road faster, I would definitely tell you, you got what I consider this tug is the tug on your heart. You got to listen more to your heart, and less to your head. And I know that's said a lot, but I had to learn to live that way because I was living out of my head for years and years.
Me too. And I think about all the reasons we wear all the masks. I mean, you actually named several of the other masks, the people pleaser, the perfectionist, and stuff like that. And for you, now at this point in your life, like I know for me it was fear of loneliness and fear of not being enough. Safety is usually in the room.
Sure.
Anything specific that you were looking for as you wore the masks, and anything that has shifted for you to feel the opposite of that?
Well,
And
the funny thing is my secondary mask on the assessment was rebel, and that's a mask I'm actually much more proud of and hold on to,
wait, you have pride. Uh-oh. Let's go back to the Enneagram.
because that reflects my true, the number one, I don't know what you call it, number one sin of a number three Enneagram is deceit. Because you can go into any room, I did this many times, and you can flip the chameleon on, and you can deceive everybody in the room that you're something that you're really not. And that too is tiring. But the irony of this whole conversation is that the rebel is truly deep inside me, to go against the grain, to disrupt. As I was told one time by a mentor, you are made to disrupt, innovate new things that are better, and build them. And so many times you have to be that one that's going to go the other direction, or that one that's going to swim against the current. And that's not always appreciated. Um, but that's a way of feeling, a way of doing that I'm actually very comfortable in, very proud of, and um, and it doesn't reflect the overachieving, because there's plenty of people that are not happy with that kind of.
Yeah, and we share this because one of the things I suppressed all along was this kind of disruptor, truth teller, piece of myself. And what I've actually been playing with lately is I can be very binary, like that's an aspect of me and that's an aspect of me, and they're not friends. And really, like lately, what I'm trying to do is like actually become whole, right? Like come back to my full self instead of compartmentalizing and siloing myself. Just like people silo businesses, we silo ourselves and only show the one part. And I think I've been scared to show that part. And as a woman, she includes anger and things that aren't considered socially and culturally accepted. And so, what would it be like to, but not at the sacrifice? I mean, my good girl, she's part of who I am. I would like to be kind. I'd like to be compassionate. And so, what does it look like to not think of it in terms of either or and the and? But again, I think that is way more easier than said when you've spent, as many years kind of hardwired into the one aspect of self, and to not want to just swing the other way and like light a bunch of things on fire that don't need to be lit on fire and then cause harm. So like the part of me that doesn't want to cause harm doesn't really, she's like, well, how does that look? Or how do I know I'm not going to cause harm? And the answer is if it's connected to your heart and you're well intentioned, how it lands is not my responsibility, right? But that's been a very, very, very hard thing to learn. And I think for you, knowing the success you have had, I believe your rebel has been in the room maybe more than your kind of inner dialogue would allow it to believe, because you couldn't have achieved what you've achieved in some different challenging environments without it.
That's interesting the way you said that in the room. I think you're right, because it's just a natural way I think. I good or bad, sometimes it's a burden, sometimes it's a gift, but good or bad, I can look at situations very quickly and assess and see where this is going to go uh, several steps down the road. And so much of my rebel comes out in that disruptor spirit by trying to say, you know, hey, don't go any further this way, because that's a dead end that leads to a cliff, and there is no way out. And you know, so I need you to follow me this way so that we can get to a better place. But I'm always, I just love people, and movies and speeches and things like that that demonstrate that kind of spirit. And especially if it's thinking in a completely different thing of something that's not ever been considered before, or it's been considered and disavowed. For example, one of my very first favorite movies, modern movies, has been Moneyball, because I love how Billy Bean, who had the lowest performing team, took a team and with a completely different thing that baseball had completely disavowed and thrown out as quackery, um, reinvented baseball. And um, that is what just fires me up. Uh, it's not the overachiever. If you've ever seen that movie, the overachiever at the end of the movie would have taken the offer to go to Boston for the big salary, but the rebel, well, can't even keep the energy inside me. It's just like the rebel wants to do it where it's hard, where people say it can't be done there.
Mm.
So that's why I hold on to that. I don't hold on to the mask so much. It's just really who I am. It just happens to be coming out as a mask because sometimes it's so much a part of me.
Right. And do you feel like when you suppress any part of yourself, it and haven't acknowledged it? I know for me, if I don't, I mean, I think of all the times I've caused harm by suppressing the part of me that I thought nobody wanted to see, and then it came out sideways anyhow. Like there was no real suppressing. I think I'm sure you've heard it where you like are trying to hold all the beach balls under the water and then at some point it just explodes.
That's right.
Like that over time I've learned the pattern of okay, how do I lean into this with, without causing harm and, or sometimes not even thinking that much and just being like just or no without an answer, no without an explanation and sometimes words give too many opportunities for argument. So then people I love want more from me. And I was like, it's just a no.
It's good for you. That's such a healthy
Listen,
place to
that's
get
been a
to.
hard lesson learned.
That's why I'm constantly, knocking down the people pleaser. That's right.
So how does the overachiever these days say no? Because no would be one of the things like, what is the signal for you? Is it,
It's just now where I'm hyper focused on what I'm here to do, and I live with a sense of urgency every single day. I've got only so much time left in my life, and that's the way it's been all my life, not just now. And so I have things I want to accomplish, things I feel called to accomplish, and so that's what I'm gonna focus on. And anything that gets in the way of that, I raise a flag up and go first. First, I raise a flag up and say, "Hey," to some of my team that assist me with some of that, and I'll say, "I'm not doing that. Take that off." Well, they so and so wants you to. I said, I'm sorry, but I'm not going to do that. Sorry, not sorry, kind of thing. so, uh, so more and more I do that, and more I have taken ownership where he's used to. Part of that overachiever mask is you carry this big burden that people are going to think you're sloughing off if you're not there working, 20 hours a day. And I used to, I mean, it was so ridiculous when I had my own medical groups that I had started by myself, grew them to fairly large size, that I was the one taking more call than everybody else intentionally. And I could have had I had the control of the call schedule. So I made it out. But I put myself on more so that no one could ever say I was loafing or slacking. And so,
there's your new nickname. I'm going to call you the slacker.
yeah, that's right. Yeah. So,
And one of the things I'm thinking about as you're talking, because I know that the overachiever in all of us, it's outworking, outdoing, so that you can prove whether it's to prove that you're better or prove that you're the one willing to work the hardest, so the rest of you better work as hard as me. I mean, there's so many levels of it, and I'm curious. And I understand your clarity on you have so much time left and you want to make the most of it. And do you believe that play is a part of that energetically and where your impact could be greater, the lighter, like I have a story that the less of the overachiever that you carry, the more lightness you have, and the more lightness you have, the more you can play in environments and really have impact because people feel that. And it's that old quote of people are going to remember how you made them feel in the end of the day. And so that's, to me, that's like a guiding light of one of the most important things. I'd be curious what your thoughts are on that.
you know, as, as an overachiever of one, I guess, in the past, you never learn how to play. And play does not play a role much in your life. And so I remember one time being told, you know, how can you try these different hobbies, but you don't stick with anything? Well, one thing I love to learn, so I was just trying to learn new things, and but I couldn't find the fun in it. It was always about like a perfect example is I decided I was going to learn how to fly, so I went took flying lessons and then got my private pilot's license, and then and then I would go, but it's really not fun. I can't find the fun in it. And other buddies of mine would say how much they loved it. They just wanted to be doing it all the time. Same with golf. I play golf, okay. And, but, I don't see hanging out here for 5 hours, on a Saturday kind of thing. So I can get stuff done, so uh, I'm still looking for that. And I think there's still elements of that lack of play and the elements of the overwork because of, I mean, this thing about sense of urgency, that's been going on since I was 20. It's not a new thing. I just always had it. And so I think play is definitely one thing that I need to, it's not a thing to do, it's just a thing to begin to find a way to appreciate. Second of all is that concept. I didn't hear this concept until, believe it or not, until about 3 years ago from a mentor of mine, that self-care is not selfish. So, so I'm still got the disease that I'm still trying to break out of, but for example, I'm way overdue on a vacation to the point that human resources called me the other day at the place where I run the organization and said, "Hey, you've got 3 weeks of vacation that if you don't use, they're just going to go away. You're just going to lose the complete value of it by August 31st." I said, "Okay." so so now I'm taking some vacation in a few weeks, and so it's yeah, play has been hard for me. Because I never gave it the value that it really deserves.
Does it feel uncomfortable? Like what is it about play or your belief about play? I mean, I don't. It doesn't sound like growing up there was room for it because the stethoscope at 10 and just the messaging of needing to be really, tight and stuff so your parents could take care of your brother. Like it all makes sense. But for me, I was curious about when you used the sense of urgency because I think I was like, that makes sense but is it still useful to you now? Do you feel still, I know with limited time is precious, but is sense of urgency required, revered?
Well, it's a sense of urgency now to be with people I care about and to be with people I want to be with, and that's not the way it was in the past. And now, I recently, after a year or two of continually being encouraged and almost like beat on the head to wake up to the fact that people thought I should be able to begin creating with writing. So I started writing, and writing is a place where when I start, I can kind of just go into a world all alone and just explore things. And so that's been something. And so it's interesting lately, and um, I never took time for creativity at all. Uh, my creativity was at work with how I did things and how I introduced things. And just recently, when my uh, parents passed away, my brother and I were going through things and all that, and I began to realize how many creative things I have done that I didn't know. I used to do a lot of woodworking, and so I would create. Um, I created this rocking horse, and they still had it, and I hadn't thought about it in years. I did some stained glass, and so I realized, well, wait a minute, there's some creativity running through. There's a vein of that running through who I really am, and and so now I think that's reflected in the work I do every day. There is a sense of I don't really. I mean, I care what you think. If you work for me, I care deeply what you think, but mostly I care what you think about the way I treat you. I care less about what you think about um, why I think this is the right direction. It's more about are you willing to go, and if not, can we talk about the questions you have about why not go this way? And so that's a lot of that's. I realize too that creativity is in my daily work for the most part. Um,
Very much with people, the way you can help them change it and turn a direction. But in listening to all the things, the woodworking, the stained glass, there's a canoe in a story. Am I right? So what I also am hearing is that you've really mentally paid attention to your overachiever, but you have been playing all along. You just haven't, you maybe not have felt it as an act of play, but I wonder, in hindsight, can you see a little bit of it as,
I can now. I can definitely see now, and it sure helps to for me physically to get away, to get to a place, whether it's in a wood shop or whether it's in a place where I can write, or if it's in a place of beauty. I love creation and what the elements of that, no matter what. So I love being in different environments and experiencing all of that. So that's there's a spirit of play, even though my play is maybe more serious than other people's play.
we still have more time to work with that.
I know you will.
I have, I have some ideas, right? Because, and really, to me, I'm playing if I'm laughing. I'm playing if I'm connecting. I'm playing if I'm having the kind of conversations I'd like to have, which is what I appreciate about you. You know, they're just that is play to me. That is my version of play. It's certainly not everybody's, and I'm not everybody's cup of tea, and that's finally become okay with me because I'm like, you got to go find your people because I'm looking
Yeah,
for mine,
that's
and
right.
uh, and I happen to like a little more diversity. Anyhow, it's pretty fun. So I am trying to think about. We've had fun. Let's just see. What do you think about? Oh gosh, I had a couple questions. I'm just trying to say if we can. The most interesting thing I found where I was looking at shadow patterns for the overachiever, and then I was like, oh, that one's me, that one's me. But um, you know, performance based on self worth is the one that jumped up to me out to me the most of thinking about it, and of course, the most important thing about self-worth is how we all think about ourselves individually, like so. But it's interesting that youthful, that impact of be a doctor, do this, do that, everything on the outside world, and then getting to this second part of life where we're like integrating, oh, there's a whole nother, a whole nother person to lead, a whole nother way to lead, another way to integrate. And so what do you hope for to integrate your kind of brilliance in your rebel? Like how do you see the rebel of you dancing with the overachiever? Because my belief is your creator from that place is a pretty exciting place to be. Does that feel where do you feel at that crossroads at the moment?
I do. The thing that always came through in me was, and I think these came from my parents in a very good way, and that was in the house I grew up in. There wasn't any, even though I grew up in the South, there wasn't any racism. There wasn't any. Uh, there was a sense that we, uh, because of our faith, we had a deeper care for people. Not that only people with faith have deeper care for people. I just don't mean to imply that, but I mean that's where ours centered from. And so it was about that willingness to help other people. And so there's something deep inside me that a number of years ago, I was doing some work on purpose, and my purpose kept coming back to this thing about uh, fighting for the invisible. And that's stayed with me forever. Fighting for the invisible people, the people. Um, for example, when I came to the organization I'm with now, um, it's a large organization. There's 15,000 people, and there wasn't any big innovative idea. But I thought, why don't we have a living wage here? Why don't we have a threshold level that takes care of these people that are struggling to live? And so at first I got a lot of pushback because, well, that's going to impact my department. And I said, at the end of the day, we're going to do this. And so we did it. And of course, now other people have copied it. But that's okay. That's the point. But so there's that theme of fighting for the downtrodden, fighting for the invisible. Um, and the second thing is I get ecstatic when I can see that something I said or did, no matter how small it is, had impact. And so, and just my weekly team meetings, if I can introduce a concept or an idea that somebody latches onto, and if they take it for their own and they take credit for it, great. I could care less. The point is, I did something. I introduced something into that space that hopefully will change the way people think about something going forward. And so those two things are mixed all in my purpose and my way of being every single day. And so where I am right now is there's a sense of urgency to put out these blogs and to write a book. I'm working on a book about the concept of what it means to live an unshaken life, and that doesn't mean a error-free life by any means, but just the concepts of my concepts, of course, from the stuff I've lived through. So it's a little bit of a memoir, but a little bit of a hopefully thoughtful philosophical book around what does grief really mean? What does it mean to have true meaning? How do we speak to others? This is one, I know I'm kind of going on, but this is one of the things that.
Well, I'm letting you go on and on because I can see you like thinking out loud and thinking about all the things you want to do with the time you have left.
Yeah, it's,
And so maybe someone will listen and be like, I can help Michael with that.
It's just, I was just talking about the consistency through my life that now I'm just becoming more aware of. When I was taking care of patients, I was always angered and frustrated by physicians that didn't take the time to communicate with people, and sometimes just to hold their hand and talk them through a difficult time. So that's what's so. I mean, maybe in somewhere in all that there's play, because I do get fun out of it.
Yeah. It's infusing the work and play seems like the dance that actually is the one you're headed towards, and I can't wait to see what it looks like. Amazing. Well, thank you for the gift of time today and your wisdom and smiling and laughing with me about the journey of life.
It's an absolute joy, Anne. It's always a joy to get to speak to you. So thank you for taking us down this road and being the guide on this.
Excellent. And cheers. We're going to get more play in there.
Yeah, that's right.
All right. Have a great one. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Most people don't realize they're wearing a mask, which hides their true power without even knowing it. But the people you work with, your friends, your family, and the world need you to step into the power of your authentic self. Take our free mask assessment to uncover which of the 15 masks you are unconsciously wearing that shapes your life and how you can start to break free. Start your journey at akeypartners.com and step into the power of your authentic self.